Hello Internet, welcome back to the Experimental Cataclysm. If you're new here, this is the show where we talk about updates that have come to the experimental version of Cataclysm over the last couple of weeks. Not a whole lot going on that I want to talk about, but there is at least one big thing that should probably be covered. In addition to that, we are going to talk about new conducts that have been added to the game, so some spoiler content lies ahead. You can check the description down below for timestamps as well as links to everything that we discuss here today. And the video itself, if you hover over the timeline of the video, it should be broken up into categories. That said, new conducts are not super spoilery. As soon as you get in the game and you fail to do one of these conducts, you're going to get a pop-up saying that you failed. So you're going to figure out what they are pretty quickly, whether you watch this or not. So let's just jump into it. First, from Curse Twist, we got a revamp of the mansions in the game. This includes the ground floor as well as the second floor, and it updates them. I mean, Curse Twist does a whole lot of really good work on lots of locations. So I'm going to show some pictures. I don't really remember what mansions used to look like, so it's a little hard for me to look at this and know the difference. But I do remember that mansions were not laid out in a sensible way. Hopefully this seeks to address some of that, because they would just randomly generate certain rooms, if I recall correctly. Interestingly, and I looked, but I didn't see anything. It doesn't look like their frequency was changed at all. It looks like they're still going to be pretty rare out-of-town buildings. But yeah, I would like to see mansions become a little bit more common. Yeah, I don't see anything about changing their frequency. Looks like all of that was left the same, but I might be misunderstanding it. I like mansions. Mansions hold some interesting value. If you go there, it's an interesting place to go, and we checked one out in the the last delivery scenario pretty recently on my stream. They're interesting locations. I'm happy to see them get a little bit of work, but it's not really clear to me what exactly was done with the actual map gen part. Like they specifically mentioned sidewalks being changed to make them fit a little bit better with the rural map gen. But I don't really know how much was done to overdo, to redo the actual layouts or spawns here. Looks like it was changed to use a different palette, which probably, has no impact whatsoever on the player. Changed stairwells to 2x1. This is where I'm a little bit uncertain of what exactly it does. It fixes bad design based on this, which is just that the mansions have some bugged things where they wouldn't be connected on the second floors and things like that. Fixed the sidewalk spawns and ensured that all stairs are consistent between floors. That's an issue with a lot of the older locations where stairs maybe didn't make sense before. So that's something that needed to be addressed, especially on second and third, or I guess it's just second floors for mansions. You would find some nonsensical stair layouts and some rooms that were not really accessible. So looks like it was mainly that. It doesn't look like they added nested chunks or anything like that we've discussed before to increase the randomness of this location. I don't know, but it's a good opportunity. If you haven't checked out a mansion recently, maybe go pop in and take a look at what's been done. Again, the last delivery, I think, final delivery scenario is one that will start you with a mission pointing to a nearby mansion. So if you're looking for a quick and easy way to find one, go ahead and check out that scenario. That was added by Frizz, I think, a few months ago. And again, we checked that out on stream pretty recently. So just wanted to shout that out. Curse Twist always doing a lot of location stuff. Does good work. Go check out the mansion. Yeah. Next, from Irk, we got some additional proficiencies added to the game. Proficiencies are going to become more and more of a gateway for you to be able to craft things. If you haven't already run into it, you're going to in the future. And again, we're still in the early stages of their implementation. I've seen a lot of people complaining about them. I think proficiencies are coming along, and after a while they will become second nature, so I would encourage you to hang in there and just kind of get used to it as they continue to flesh those things out. Irk specifically has added proficiencies for pottery, plastic working, and glass making. I don't know anything about plastic working, but pottery and glass making both make perfect sense to me as proficiencies. I don't really know what plastic working means, but yeah, just more proficiencies being added to the game. We're going to see these pop up more and more. We're going to see these added to recipes more and more. And I just wanted to point out that more of them are being added to the game, so keep an eye out when you go to craft things, because they're gonna continue to pop up more and more. I don't want to touch too much on it. Obviously we could go through and tell you everything that uses these proficiencies, but that seems like a lengthy amount of time we would spend. You're going to start noticing them in the crafting menu. You'll figure it out as you go. I just wanted to point out that more were added. And then in addition to that, ERC also added tailoring related proficiencies, specifically to container recipes. That would be the backpacks and things like that. So this is something else that has been cropping up lately. People have been complaining quite a bit about not being able to sew their stuff. I personally was really excited when they announced a tailoring overhaul several months ago. I was really excited to see what that all entailed. That really has not been fleshed out. We still don't have sewing machines. We still don't have a lot of the crafting things. We're supposed to get a serious audit about how much time they take and the requirements for them and things like that. And most of that has not really materialized. With the nested container update, they're now pushing. That was such a huge update that they're kind of pushing towards 0.f, which we probably should have discussed at the top of the episode. Maybe I'll jam something in editing. I'll put something, I guess we'll discuss at the end of the episode where 0.f is currently, where that project stands. But yeah, they were supposed to really overhaul the tailoring profession type stuff, or not profession, excuse me, the tailoring crafting and things like that. This is a step in that direction, but it's not really kind of what we were promised as part of the project. I'm sure that is going to, again going to be continually refined over time. That is something that a lot of people who play the game don't seem to understand, is that everything, baby steps, right? Everything is a progression. So I don't know, but we got a tailoring profession, specifically those related to crafting backpacks and things. So just more professions that need to be something, garment closures and fabric waterproofing. Huh. Okay. But these are things that are going to be popping up, so you need to keep an eye on them. And I saw some people talking about buttons and zippers recently, but they were having issues because disassembling, which is what ERC is talking about here, disassembling for most clothing still does not include those items, and making them requirements in crafting recipes when many disassembly recipes still don't give them is problematic. So that is something you should be aware of moving forward. If you're struggling to find buttons and zippers that you require for crafting, you will have to look specifically for what items currently have them in their disassemble recipes. So, but again, baby steps, ladies and gentlemen. Don't get too frustrated. And like I said, before you know it, you'll be used to these things, and it will become second nature for you to work towards proficiencies and things like that. It just takes adjustment, takes more refinement, things like that. Next, from Xenomorph, we got some shelf-stable juices added to the game. Really happy to see this. We actually have a real lack of non-perishable beverages in the game. We basically only have soda and water are the two that come to mind that are actually non-perishable or sealed in a way that they can be good for a long time. We really didn't have any juices at all. And honestly, if you go into your supermarket and look around, there's a lot more than just water and soda that you can store on a shelf. So I was really happy to see some shelf-stable juices added to the game. Don't know why I'm finding that to be such a tongue twister, shelf-stable juices. And we can take a look at what they are, actually. I didn't even look at what juices were added, but it makes sense to me. Apple juice, grape juice can be set for a period of time. Pasteurized fruit juice. Oh, it's just a vague kind of abstraction. It's not actually a specific type of juice. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't appear to be different types of juice. It literally is just called pasteurized fruit juice. Okay. I would have liked to have seen that be broken up into different types. Obviously we have different flavors of soda, and yeah, it just makes more sense to me that you would break that down. But any kind of fruit juice is an improvement. We haven't really had anything like that. And things like this will be coming into play eventually when they get around to re-adding vitamin deficiencies and things like that. Obviously, fruit juice is I guess nowadays everything contains so much sugar that it's probably not that good for you. But we could get all kinds of juices added to the game. I would like to see this differentiated, because like when you have an abstraction like that where you just call it fruit juice, it becomes impossible to use actual real world values Maybe I'm misunderstanding this. Somebody let me know in the comments if I'm an idiot and maybe there are different juices and I just don't understand what I'm looking at. Maybe I'm missing. I don't see anything specific. It looks like it copies from juice, which again is just vague. I would prefer to see multiple types of juices. That way we could actually assign them real world equivalents. So, if you drank apple juice, let's say, it would have a certain layout of vitamins, calories, quench, etc. Versus if you drank something like, I don't know, what's another, cranberry juice, completely different from a vitamin perspective, probably, and would have a different impact. But again, obviously, without vitamin deficiencies in the game, it's not super relevant. But I feel like you should take those steps now so that in the future it's easier to make those things happen. So it's cool to see fruit juice added to the game that is shelf stable. I would have liked to see a little bit more diversity from that. But it's cool. I'm glad we have shelf stable beverages, more shelf stable beverages added to the game. I would like to see even more of that kind of stuff added because we really only had, now with less racism. I have to click that. I have to know what that means. Okay, I don't know. But anyway, we're going to move on to the next thing. Next from G. Carfakis. It's their first PR. Hey, welcome to the team. Thanks for the contribution. We have a new, basically a caloric density menu option added to the eat menu. So if we take a look at the screenshot here we have how many calories exist per kilogram of the food. This just represents the caloric density of the food that you're eating. It is my opinion, it's their first PR, I should be nice. It's my opinion that this was not really necessary. For a long time, I mean, it's just like real life, right? If you want to gain weight, you eat calorie dense food that has a low volume because you can eat more of it without filling your stomach to the point where you can't eat anymore. So you will eat foods that have a low volume and high calorie content. If you're trying to lose weight, you eat the opposite. You eat lettuce, you eat cabbage, things that have large volume to them or that swell and expand in your stomach, but have low calorie count for the volume of the food. So in Cataclysm, for a long time now, when I'm underweight, I will focus on meat and things like that have a high caloric density. Sandwich is not a great example because the volume is a little bit bigger. But people will often eat, beef jerky, bacon, things like that, low volume food that have high calorie counts, and the opposite when you're trying to lose weight. So what this does is add a column that basically tells you the density of that food, which is fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this. I already kind of was doing this in my head. So it adds more information for the player. It's obviously more readable than having to look at two separate columns and find the thing you're looking for and to compare the volume, etc. So there is value in this. I didn't really think that this was strictly necessary, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who are going to appreciate this. Certainly a lot of you seem to min-max constantly instead of eating like a normal human being. So this will enable min-maxers all the more, which I don't know if that's a good thing. But I think it's fine, and now you can very quickly see the caloric density of food. There is some issue with this, like, I guess it comes back to the min-maxers because like the most calorically dense stuff here are like the jams, the butters, the things like that. The things that I personally feel like players should not be consuming on their own, but people are now going to see this and be like, I should eat all mayonnaise because mayonnaise is super calorically dense. So I do worry about the min-maxing, but ultimately, I can't use that as a judgment on the actual implementation itself. I think it does exactly what this contributor was setting it out to do, and it's fine. I think it's perfectly fine. I think it relays more information to the player. In general, I'm usually pretty pro information. Like anytime we can, give the player more info, I think that is beneficial in general to do. We'll discuss that a little bit when we get to discussing weariness and some of the issues I have with weariness. So I think this is fine. I feel bad now because I feel like I crapped on it, but it's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. So anyway, now when you go to eat food, there's going to be this column that relays to you the caloric density of the food that you're eating. I think a lot of people are really going to like it. So that is that. Next from Jay, by the way, we got the addition of multiple conducts. These are the traditional conducts that you would see in something like NetHack. This includes things like foodless, vegan, vegetarian, and nudist. And even references the NetHack conducts. Always, oh man, I gotta go back and play NetHack. It's been so long. I just don't like the meta game of NetHack. But anyway, back to this. So we had some more conducts added to the game. In particular, I like vegan, vegetarian, and foodless. I think they're pretty interesting. Unfortunately, in Cataclysm, there's really no ability to sustain yourself permanently without food. This was possible in NetHack due to their, because they had magical abilities that would reduce your need for food in the first place. You could also pray to your god to have them satisfy your hunger, things like that. I don't know how viable that actually is for Cataclysm unless they're not counting drinking as food, because you could potentially, if you kept your activity low enough and you drank a lot of calorically dense beverages, then I could see it as possible. It only applies to eating, but vegan and vegetarian apply to all consumption. That's interesting. I bet you could... I don't know how long it would be sustainable. I bet you could last for quite a while, though, on just beverages. That's really interesting. Might have to give that a shot. But anyway, that's really cool, and I would encourage you to give these a shot sometime. They're certainly going to change the way you play the game. Vegan and vegetarian are pretty self-explanatory. I do think it could be a little tricky if people aren't super familiar with the ingredients in an item. It might have some issues with quickly identifying what food is vegan or not. But again, that's something you will learn over time. It looks like, okay, I was going to say it must be based on ingredients, but there's no way of relaying that to the player, I think, once something is crafted. Whatever, I haven't played with it at all. And then nudist, I think, is a really interesting prospect as well, because I think it's probably one of the easier ones to say, oh, I'm going to chase this. Like I said, trying to be vegan, I do think you might run into some problems identifying what food is vegan. Nudist seems like a really pretty easy one. You would just be naked all the time. It would make the game more difficult, obviously, but it would be interesting. My question is, if you're spawning a character with clothes on, aren't you immediately going to fail nudist? If you choose a scenario that starts with clothing, are you immediately going to lose nudist, or is there a window in which you're permitted to take off your clothing? That would be my other question. But regardless of all that, sorry, I didn't mean to rant about each specific conduct, but conducts have been added to the game. Sorry, I'm back on my squeaky chair. I've had some chair issues lately. Conducts have been added to the game. I really like conducts because they provide a framework for people to play the game a different way from how they would normally play the game. I really was excited when they started adding conducts and achievements. A lot of the achievements, in my opinion, have been kind of copy-paste type initial implementation. That some of them are cool, but most of them I'm not super into. Conducts, though, I think conducts are really cool, and I think they could shape the way, like for challenge runs and things like that for players, that will make the game all that much more replayable. So I really like the idea of conducts. I don't know how many NetHack conducts are actually viable, like for this game. We do have the pacifist achievements and things, or was that a conduct as well? That was added to the game where striking NPCs or zombies or whatever, they all have different, maybe they were conducts, I don't remember. But regardless, I didn't mean to ramble. Let's move on to the final and probably the biggest thing in today's discussion, which would be the Weariness implementation from Another Simulacrum. All right, so I'm going to take this as take 2. This is the second time I'm recording this. We're going to try not to sound like an idiot as we discuss the Weariness implementation that has come down over the last about 2-3 weeks ago. So, Weariness was added to the game. I have not played, a full disclosure, I have not played with Weariness very much. I'm kind of on a hiatus right now. I have a lot of family stuff going on that's really screwing up my ability to stream and record YouTube. So, most of you have played with this, probably more than I have, so I don't have the insight that I would normally have on a major mechanic change like this. Normally, I look it up immediately. I seek to understand it so that I can relay that information to you. This one's a little more complicated, and I struggle a lot with understanding what it does. So, weariness was added to the game. You've probably already noticed that you're getting weary after some activity in the game. As you exercise, in fact, add weariness, a sort of long-term stamina, which limits the player's ability to be active, extremely active 24/7. My understanding, if you remember a couple weeks ago and over the course of the last few months, you have been probably struggling to maintain weight in Cataclysm. Since they added various activities to the game that utilize different calorie consumption based on the activity level, characters have really been struggling to maintain weight, to gain weight, to eat enough calories, and to survive as active as we are. I'm a firm believer that in Cataclysm we work way harder and just do crazy amounts of work compared to what a real life person does. We are constantly fighting enemies. We are doing a lot of crafting for hours at a time, hunched over our desks and tables, hunched over our forges, blacksmithing, cutting down trees, starting fires, doing all these things that, burn calories. Simply being next to my character in the game is often using a stove with a fire in it. Simply being adjacent to a fire, being that warm, to my understanding, increases your calorie consumption, which I didn't know was a thing, but someone told me was a thing. I don't know if that's 100% true, but even that simple act is more calories because you're sweating and you're losing. I can't. Is that even true? That doesn't seem true. But regardless, we fight, we cut down trees, we do a lot of things that are pretty bonkers, and we do them for hours and hours and hours. We walk for miles at a time through the game, so we've been burning a ton of calories in the game. And as a measure to try and cut down on you starving yourself to death, they've added weariness. My understanding of why this was implemented was specifically to prevent characters from overexerting themselves to the point where they're consuming so many calories that they're starving to death. If you think about it in that frame of mind as a kind of bug fix for calorie consumption, I think it makes a lot more sense. I like the idea of tracking long-term mental and physical fatigue in the game. I like the concept a lot. I'm not crazy about the implementation. My understanding of weariness, which is very limited. I looked through the code. I'm not very good at reading code. I had a really hard time understanding what I'm looking at. My understanding is that it changes your calorie consumption and it changes your move cost, are like the two things that I know that it does. So there were people on Discord who were reporting that swinging their weapon, which would normally take like 100 moves, is taking thousands of moves because they're extremely weary. So weariness seems to be a multiplier on the move cost for most activities. So I assume walking is very slow. I assume swinging a weapon is very slow. Anything that utilizes your move cost is probably going to be very slow. Additionally, it changes the way that you burn calories is the way I understand it. So it again is supposed to limit your ability to overexert yourself to the point of starvation. I don't like the implementation. I know I have not played with it as much as most people. I've seen a ton of complaining about this. People are really not very happy about this. I don't think it's probably as bad as you think it is, and I think it serves a valuable purpose, but I don't love the way it's implemented. And the main thing that I don't like is that it does not relay that information in any way to the player. Let's pop in the game here, and I'll show you what I mean. So here we are on my stream world. You'll see my character is lightly weary. One of my main complaints, I was streaming, people kept asking, hey, are you on the weariness update? Hey, what do you think of weariness? I got in the game. We played for maybe 2 hours of real time. Most of that time was spent walking around, just exploring this mall that we're in. We did a little bit of fighting, mostly just a little bit, like not very much fighting at all because I've been mainly luring enemies through the gaps to the lower floor. And my character became lightly weary despite me not being that active, in my opinion. So my first concern is that you seem to get weary very quickly. I don't love the speed at which I became weary. And then when I got weariness, I checked it out. Oh my God, is my guy 6'7" tall? He's 16. That's a big, good God. But anyway, jeez. Weariness. So we got the weariness, and my next complaint was that I read the description. You've been pretty active for a while. Operating at the highest levels of activity will be impaired. And that's my main complaint now. This tells me nothing. This is not a helpful description. By far my biggest complaint. you're not telling your players what this means. And in fact, I've seen a lot of people on Discord saying, I don't understand what this means. And that's because they're not telling you. If we look at something like pain, which is another effect, it's the same effect. Pain very clearly lays out what it does to your character. -1 attribute to these 3 attributes, and it reduces your speed by 12%. Weariness tells you nothing. What operating at the highest levels of activity will be impaired. What does that mean? Is it my stats? Is it my speed? Is it what does it do? No information relayed. The only reason I even knew it affected our move cost was because I've seen people griping about it and because I looked at the code. And for the record, it appears to be a multiplier, which makes it extremely potent, whereas a pain penalty is a flat reduction in your speed. Weariness seems to be a multiplier on move cost, so that's way more significant. And honestly, in a lot of games, you have to decide between realism and gaminess. So for instance, pain, in real life, if I stub my toe and am in pain, I can't actually quantify that in a speed reduction. It might reduce my speed because, I stubbed my toe and now I can't walk right, but I can't look at my body and say, I'm moving 12% slower than I normally would. So relaying this specific information to the player is gamey. In real life, you would not be able to quantify it in such a straightforward language as, it's a 12% reduction. In general, I prefer realism over gaminess. So I would prefer if this just said, speed and stats reduced would be my preference to that. But I also understand why it's here, and it does help players because 1, there are a lot of people who min-max, and 2, it's a game. People want to understand what is happening to them. We can see the same thing if we look at our encumbrance system. It very clearly tells you, even if you don't necessarily understand precisely what that thing means, it still gives you those numbers and gives you an understanding of the impact that it has on your character. Weariness is extremely vague, and I hate it. I like Another Simulacrum. I trust that they implemented a solid system and that it will be refined over time. But this description is in my opinion, is lackluster and needs to be improved upon. The weariness descriptions need to relate to the player. It would cut down on so much frustration. I've seen so many people on Discord confused. And if they would implement a better description that just relayed more information to the player, people would be less frustrated, which in turn would lead to less complaining for the devs and things like that. So I think transparency here would be hugely beneficial. That's my main complaint with Weariness. I haven't played with it enough to know if it's too debilitating. I don't know. I don't have opinions on the actual multiplier reduction. I don't know. I haven't played with it very much. My main complaint is that you need to tell people what is happening to reduce confusion and to make the game more enjoyable. No one likes... I've been playing Crusader Kings 3 in my free time and for the channel, and one of my biggest complaints about the game is that it doesn't tell me things I need to know. There are things that you expect a mouse over tooltip for that don't exist, and it actively makes me have less fun because I don't understand what I'm doing. I don't understand the game mechanic, and it becomes a point of frustration to the point that I don't want to play anymore. That is what I'm concerned with for this description. People are not going to understand. People are going to see that they all of a sudden are fighting zombies and it's taking forever. The zombies are getting 2 or 3 or 5 hits on them before they can swing their weapon. People are going to get frustrated. They're not going to understand why this is happening, and they're not going to want to play anymore. That's my main concern, is for newer players and people who can't be... not everyone goes on the Discord to ask questions. Not everyone looks in the code. I tried looking in the code. I still don't really understand it. So I'm concerned about that level of transparency. That's my biggest concern. So I just wanted to talk about Weariness. I know it's affecting a lot of people. I'm sorry I can't give you more information. I just don't know. And I have a hard time reading code. So unfortunately, I can't tell you too much. I would encourage you, if you have a lot of questions, to come to Discord. We have the dev Discord which has a player help channel. And we have the community Discord, which people will try their best to answer questions, but obviously you don't have as much access to dev members who actually know the nitty-gritty of that information. And I would encourage you to come and ask questions if you're confused or if you're frustrated. That way you can better understand what's happening, and hopefully you will be less frustrated. So that's my take on Weariness. I again just have not played with it enough. Thanks for bearing with me in like a 10 or 12 minute rant. And let's that'll be that. Let's touch on 0.F and the progress that they're making for 0.F. All right, so let's talk about 0.F and the progression towards it. So this was announced on August 2nd. That was a month ago. I'm sorry, 2 months ago. August, September, October. Yes, okay, 2 months ago. I'm an idiot. 2 months ago, they announced that they were going to move towards 0.F. I, in my infinite wisdom, said, oh yeah, in about 3 or 4 months, we'll probably see the release. And I realize now, which is something I already knew but should have taken more, thought about, is that I have no idea, frankly. And I have no idea what their schedules are like, what their goals are, things like that. Last year, in fact, 0.E, I remember saying, oh yeah, they're going to bang that out before Christmas because they're going to want to get it done before the holidays. And then it was like, when did 0.E release? I think it was like March, something like that. I don't remember. But it was several months later, and I should have known better than to try and guess at what they're planning. So I saw someone on, no one to be named, I saw someone say they're not even working on 0.F. They were mad about Weariness, and they were like, why are they doing this instead of working on 0.F? And I just wanted to push back on that because even though, so as the player and as someone who vaguely follows Cataclysm's development, you probably know that we're in feature freeze, but you also probably know we haven't progressed to content freeze. And that's probably all that you know. Most of us don't see every little nitty gritty thing that they're doing. All we see is feature freeze, content freeze, string freeze, release, basically. So I just wanted to push back a little bit because they're working on it. This issue and the project will be linked in the description down below if you want to check that out on GitHub. And I just wanted to show you the project. They have already done apparently 67, if not more, that just aren't on the list, things that were needed to be done prior to 0.F's release. In addition to that, they have blockers, which is things that directly interfere with the release of 0.F. For example, the Weariness system that we just discussed is a feature, and we are in feature freeze, so you would think like, oh, you shouldn't do that. But it was also specifically to take care of a blocker that is going to prevent 0.F's release, which would have been players consuming calories to the point that they're starving themselves to death. It would have been terrible to release 0.F without some system in place to prevent that from happening. So they're constantly working on blockers. There's been a ton of bug fixes lately. Proficiencies are something that's being worked on that is apparently important to 0.F. There are things that are being worked on. I just wanted to push back because I saw someone who was like, why are they doing this instead of working on 0.F? They're working on 0.F. Like, we just don't see it because it's mostly bug fixes and content type stuff that, you in your head, you think like, oh, it's just another thing like the Weariness system, but it's actually has there's a purpose behind it. They're trying to tackle some of these issues that they don't want to make it into 0.F. And I'll say again, and I said this when we discussed it initially, stable releases are super important for a game like this. Stable releases are when articles get written. They're when old players return to the game to see what's new. It offers players who only play on stable a chance to experience new features, which means that there will be more playtesting for existing features than there are currently. Because, in my head, I'm an experimental player. And so I assume everyone is an experimental player, but I meet people all the time who say, I'm on 0.E stable, I'm on E2 stable. This will give people who only play stable a chance to play with these new systems. They will provide valuable feedback. There will be discussion about bugs that might be discovered as a result of having an influx of players playing that. There's a lot of value that comes from a stable release. So 0.F, it needs to be in a position where it's pretty not super polished. Obviously bugs make it through and things like that, but they want it to be the best product that it can be. It might not look like from the outside that they're working on things, but they are, and I just wanted to push back a little bit on that mindset. So 0.F, it's a work in progress. My initial time frame obviously is incorrect. It'll probably be several more months before it gets released, which, just as a friendly reminder, people ask me sometimes, I'm not a dev. I'm just some dude. Like, I'm nobody. I'm just some guy who likes the game, and decided to make a video about updates to help grow my YouTube channel. Like, I'm not, a dev member. I don't really contribute. I'm not part of these discussions where dev team members are talking to each other about things. I don't generally have inside knowledge. I'm just some guy, so don't listen to me. Don't listen to me when I tell you things. Anyway, I think that's a wrap on this episode. So everybody, oh, and you know what? I've been having a lot of problems lately. We haven't talked about it in this show, but I've been dealing with a lot in my personal life with my brother, especially my home life. There have been a lot of things going on, some of which are extremely terrible and really derailing my life. And I've been feeling very sad. I've been very kind of lonely. I've been on Discord a lot more, trying to just interact with people because it makes me feel better. And I know that I'm not alone. I know that there are some of you who are listening to this right now who are sad, who are dealing with depression, who are dealing with horrible world events, things like that. And I know that I'm not alone in feeling not great. And I just wanted to say, neither are you. We're out here. There are a lot of people who are going through similar things to what you're going through. Just keep that chin up, ladies and gentlemen. Keep your chin up. I know the world's a scary place right now, but stay safe. Keep your head up, and just gotta work through things. So everybody, thanks for watching. Stay positive out there, and I of course will be back in the near future with more updates. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.